I'm inviting you to a workshop where you work on you. Welcome to Clarity Dojo. Work to connect to the best in the world to get clarity. Head over to claritydojo.com. You'll get the latest research techniques, examples, and it takes all of the guesswork out of which questions to ask in order to get the best insight. Get clarity and take action today. Mike Zurzolo, thank you so much for meeting with me tonight. I really appreciate you taking some time to discuss your career path.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So the goal here is career clarity. We're looking to model for the audience the ability to connect with people like we're doing right now via Skype. We're on Skype. I'm on a laptop, but I'm shooting a lot of these on my cell phone. So, you can use your cell phone, do a little bit of research, and find people who are doing the thing that you want to do. So, Mike, can you just explain how you kind of did the research in order to get into your current career? So, Mike, if you could just explain what you're currently doing, and then kind of step us through the path to where you are now.
Okay. So right now, I'm doing computer engineering at a local engineering firm. We do a lot of stuff for the Navy, and it has to do with radio systems and some test equipment and some stuff that kind of bleeds over into detecting certain things about the environment. And I got started right out of high school. So I actually got started with Hank because he knew my dad, and they just got talking about what their kids did, and I had an interest in computers, so that's how I got hooked up with him, and I just was helping him on tests. He would go out and test equipment, or I would do things in the office that honestly he didn't want to pay somebody else to do. And I just kind of got my hands on all the stuff that was in his office and wanted to see what I had an interest in and what I didn't. And that was really helpful because when I went away to school and I started doing some stuff in classes that I wasn't really interested in, that kind of helped. I already had some work experience, so I knew what kind of environment I wanted to work in and what kind I didn't want to work in.
All right, let me just dig into that a little bit. So you said you started with Hank. You're currently working with him now, and this was in senior year of high school, correct?
Yeah, just after I graduated.
Okay, so you just graduated from high school. You start, and this connection was through family. So your dad runs with your boss, Hank.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay, cool. So, I think just I interject and try to pick out little points that the people who listen to this. So the networking thing is, and we're talking about this in my high school classes right now as well. People like to focus on the thing that they want to do and really zero in on that. And some people aren't sure yet, but the people who are sure, they focus in on that. But then the networking piece of you need to kind of find people who do what you want to do and understand what that job is, and understand what you like and maybe what you don't like, and maybe pivot into new directions because of that. So it sounds like you did that. You met your boss, you did some work for him, you understood some of the tools of the trade and the environment a little bit, and then you went off to school already having a clearer understanding because of an internship of what you like and what you don't like. And then can you pick up from there?
Yeah, already understanding what I liked and what I didn't like. And I kind of stayed in contact with Hank and continuing to touch back on work experiences with him over breaks and stuff like that, started to draw even a clearer picture that what I was studying was not really what I wanted to do. So after 3 semesters at Rutgers, I came home and I just took some classes at RCBC and shifted closer to the work that I was doing with him, which was more computer science-y. That's what I'm going to rowing for right now. And it's closer to the work that I was doing because it was software work, and then also we got to work with some cool equipment. So it wasn't. I was going for engineering at Rowan, and it was a little more theoretical, and it was not quite what we were doing. Even though it was engineering, you'd think that here I am working as an engineer, it'd be closer. It wasn't as close as you'd think.
Okay. So where do you think the experience that you got, you had mentioned that there was a little bit of crossover, so like you're starting to see what you're picking up what you're doing in the internship, and then the job, the school is starting to teach it. So can you just explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so learning things on the job happens so much faster, and especially when you have an interest in what you're doing, you kind of pick things up quickly. So a lot of the stuff I ended up learning faster at my part-time job, and then I would go in to take class, and it's like, well, I already did that last week because I was solving network problems and taking a networking class at the same time, like computer networking. And it's easier to pick skills up if you're using them every day, and sometimes that happens more at a job than it will in a class.
Yeah. So I'm getting this pattern. So we've had a couple interviews now, and the folks I'm talking to are people who either have or have not done like real world, in the line of their career, types of either interning or paid type of work. And there's a lot of lumps along the way of like, stuff's on the line. I need to get this done in time. It's important. We're getting paid for it. It's important work for, lots of different reasons, helping out the clients. I think that that's a key element that maybe people can start to move towards sooner. So a lot of this podcast is geared towards the people that I see every day. So I have this conversation in my classes, and I'm talking to 14 to 18-year-old kids that they're just, maybe a lot are very hesitant to take this type of step. And I'm not sure if family's involved in like helping set that up or push. Like in your situation, your dad was like right in line with the networking connection. So there was trust there. There was already a friendship between family and your boss. So like I think that getting family involved, depending on what's going on within the family, you really have that conversation with your family, and then how can you start getting into local businesses or networking to get to the point where you have this real world experience, because you end up seeing what you want and what you don't want. So I'm just kind of summarizing what you said, but what I'm hearing over and over again too. So I think that's a key point that just keeps coming up, and I wanted to kind of put a pin in that for a second. So how about at college? Like, have you been doing any further networking, or do you think this is you're already in your gig and you want to stay in this gig? Is that what's happening right now?
So I do want to stay in this gig, but networking's still important. So I'm reaching out on LinkedIn and use Slack for a bunch of different groups, and I'm planning on keeping all of those alive even after the group projects, just to see where people go. I've actually brought. Oh, sorry.
Is that through university? You guys are using Slack?
No, just spinning up channels. The free channels are good enough for everything I've needed them for.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that there was more like free type channels. So you set up Slacks, but for university projects, or is this through work?
For both. We use it for work, but then I'll use it for different university projects. There's actually a Slack channel for the high school too, for the work that we do with Mrs. Kirk and some of the TSA students.
That's great. Shawnee TV's on Slack as well right now, so it's great for all kinds of things, tasking and setting up assigning people at replying, hashtag channel replying, that kind of stuff. So awesome. And I kind of interrupted you for it. So you're staying in touch with Slack, different channels, and just kind of keeping in touch with people as to what they're doing. I think that's another key point that I'm hearing over and over is, the networks that you're creating in personal relationships, either in a job or on a set for like what we do with filmmaking, that you end up flying together throughout your careers. Like, everybody, one guy gets a cool gig, and then, you bring a team on, and that kind of thing happens over and over again. So, is there any of that going on? Like, are you getting pulled into like, any of that with your college network?
Not with my college network, but I see it happen, and it's happening a little bit at the work network that I'm now involved in. So there's other companies that we work with, and they're smaller engineering companies, but it pass work around. Some people are kind of their own business entity, and a lot of the work they do is contract work. Mm-hmm. And everyone just kind of stays fed that way, kind of passing around whatever the job is.
Yeah, I mean that I think is that's what makes the work go around. You start, as long as somebody knows you and knows the work you're capable of, and then people, word of mouth happens. Like you said, you stay fed, and I like that. So I think you're a shining star example of, all right, so network young, connect with a position that you're digging, you like it, learning what you like and what you don't like, going to a school, learning that school wasn't probably the best option, and for whatever reasons, whether it's the classes, the networking, because some of the things, at least for me, I was an engineer at Rowan for a little while myself, and I didn't really click with the peer groups. So I think sometimes there's that goes on. I just had a conversation with Justin O'Donnell, and he kind of alluded to, he wished he would have did a little bit more networking and fit in with some more of the gigs that were going on at the school. Do you feel like when you went to the first school that might have been something that influenced your decision to move, or was it just more like the classes?
It was a little bit of both. I didn't maybe get out and involved in as many things as I should have. Mm-hmm. It was too easy to get lost in the crowd. It was too big of a school for me. So it was too easy to not show up for class and not have to answer to that, or not really get involved with anything, or have so many people in my classes that I never really made a personal connection with anyone.
Yeah. I think,
so, I think that's definitely part of it.
All that, there is a part of that. So like the cell phone culture that we're in now, in the quote unquote real world, a lot of business is done, face to face through, deep levels of trust and friendship and, that kind of thing. I think that getting lost in the crowd or lost in the somewhat anonymity of social media, and I'm a social media bug, like I'm a tech geek, and I love all that stuff. So but there is this right here, like a face. We're using technology, but we're talking to each other in a real way. So I think that the more connections you make in the program, and connect with the professors and connect with the material and the tasks that you're doing. But college is so much more than that. I really feel like this is what's needed in college, more of like reaching out to people who are actually doing this thing that you want to do, and having a conversation about like what makes the most sense to get involved with, so that you can get there faster and kind of find out what you want and what you don't want. So I guess I'm just going to run our typical like podcast question set. So what I'm doing is just modeling. These are the questions. I have a free course on the website. So the website's claritydojo.com. Just launched the website, just launched the course, and the course runs you through different questions to ask if you're connecting with mentors. It also has a really good search tool section, like you mentioned, LinkedIn, how to set up LinkedIn, and there's a bunch of videos on LinkedIn's website that teaches you how to basically get their algorithms feeding you better stuff. So it's all about like the keywords that you're using. And then there's also ways that you can search Google with certain search modifiers, and then websites that just do all that work for you, like so you don't have to memorize almost code. There's a website called recruiting.net. And I think when you were in school, I maybe even talked to your engineering classes about that website back in the day. But I'm still, tooting that horn. You can use Google search terms to search all kinds of stuff. And recruiters do that. And there's a lot of videos out there that give you way more cool modifiers that you could use for Google search that recruiters are using to search all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, I don't know, the New York Times. You can search the New York Times for specific other keywords like, computer engineers and, South Jersey. And then all of a sudden, anything that they've ever reported on, now you're like, oh, that guy. And then you go find them on social media, and then you have this kind of conversation with them. So like, I'm learning as I go, and I'm trying to like feed that back to the audience and say like, connect, keep talking, having this talk. So that's all in the course. And I guess I'm just going to run the questions, and then, we'll see what shakes out of that. And there'll be like a little closing from there. So, Mike, what would you recommend for training? If I'm, consider me maybe like a senior in high school, with your experience now, what would you recommend for somebody who does what you do?
I would try to get in to someone who does it and ask to shadow, because if you show an interest and you say, hey, I want to come pick up anything, you learn a lot, even if it's that you don't want to do that thing. Yeah. And you learn so much faster on the job. You'll pick up in one semester's worth of time, you could pick up classes for just way more time. Like you pick up a whole year of classes, no problem. So I would say just find someone who does it and ask if you can shadow, ask if you can do anything to just get around them and learn what they're doing.
Got it. What now? Just I guess a follow-up question to that. Like, if you were to say like, what's the best way to find people that do what you do? What would you recommend?
I would look for somewhere local. I'd try to get as close as I could to what happened to me, but without having to rely on, oh, well, my dad knows a guy. So local businesses, I mean, everyone posts somewhere that they have a business doing something. So it could be as easy as a Google search and, oh, hey, you're in this town, the next town over. I'm interested in what you do. Can I come in?
Yeah. Yeah, it's literally as simple as that. I would love to inspire people to just keep doing that, and hopefully lots of people are doing that. And the sooner you do it, the better. And I'll keep asking follow-up questions here. What age do you feel like you were ready to make that call? Do you feel like you could have did it any earlier than when you did it?
Yeah, sure. And I went in with nothing, so like I didn't have any experience that would have helped me. I was interested in computers, but I didn't know how to write code or anything when I started with them. So sometimes I hear an excuse from kids who are in college that they don't have enough experience to go get an internship. And why would someone pay me to work here? Like, I feel like I don't know enough yet. Just go start. I definitely could have started earlier. I could have started in high school. In fact, we had 4 high school interns in this summer, and none of them were seniors. So they were sophomores and juniors.
Yeah, love that. That to me, that's the sweet spot. And when you're in your sophomore year and junior year, junior year is starting to get a little pushy. So like that age is a tough age. I think that people are not 100% mature enough to have, the foresight of like thinking towards college and career yet. But if you're curious and you're like, I'm looking at this, and you can get your parents on board to like take you there, you're not driving yet, then, make that connection. Like as soon, like I hear it a lot. I say this a lot on this podcast. It's like, I want to be a video game designer. I want to, certain kinds of careers people are like starting to gravitate towards because of whether they play games or they watch CSI or whatever it is. On the instance of the curiosity, use that, like leverage that like curious energy to, one, talk to your parents and be like, hey, I'm going to go look this up. Is it all right if I go call somebody who does this thing? And, then get that thing going. So, it sounds like, you had a kind of a combination of parents and you probably could have done it a little earlier. But that's awesome that your company is bringing on students at that age, and I think I'm trying to schedule with your boss as well to, have that discussion. How about this one? What resources do you recommend, whether it's like sites, websites, books, podcasts, for somebody who does what you do?
I look at other people's work. So I'll go to GitHub to see what people are doing projects that I'm doing. There are forums like Stack Overflow's one that shows up whenever you're Googling any kind of question about how do I do X, Y, or Z in whatever language. Usually Stack Overflow is one of the first links. And I mean, you get what you get with forums. So sometimes it's people who have opinions in the loudest voice, but sometimes it's people who actually know what they're talking about. That's
basically it.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Stack Overflow is one of my favorites. I like like they vote up, the right answer, kind of, that forum like hierarchy of like, and I do this a lot, like, all the way back, and since message boards came out. I mean, back in the day, I'm dating myself, but there were bulletin boards, BBS systems that you had to dial into somebody else's system. But the ability to kind of like threaded chat search and then upvote the right truth, that goes a long way. So cool. Are there any tools or skills you recommend somebody who is getting into computer programming acquires?
I would recommend that you pick up Linux, because I think that it's undervalued in a lot of computer science programs. It seems to be in Rowan's at least a little bit. Mm-hmm. Maybe I missed that because I did come in halfway through the program, so they might have covered it on the earlier side. But a lot of engineering uses it.
Okay.
So it's very little Windows machines unless you have to for like editing PDFs or you're doing stuff that's on the business side too. But a lot of the engineering world is Linux. So if you could pick up that, and if you could pick up some Python, just because it's easy enough to use and you don't have to fight the language or take a ton of it to really be useful.
Cool. I'm not super skilled on the coding side, so I can't ask a whole lot of follow-up questions with that, but that's very useful knowledge on the Linux side. I think that there's I've definitely had quite a few students come through our program that were tinkering with Linux. I haven't really gone there myself. For me, it's like buy a MacBook, because when you need something to work for the media production side of things, it always works. You open the lid and things are working. So I like hearing the that kind of threw me a little bit. I wouldn't have guessed that, but cool. Is there anything you would recommend someone to do? So, I think you had already mentioned, try to find somebody who does it and then shadow. Anything else? Maybe like a shortcut?
Uh, if you're interested in it, mess around with it on your own. I mean, I learned a lot of stuff just like breaking old machines and seeing if I could get them back to a working state, or trying out different projects. Ton of websites have tutorials on whatever you're trying to do. So walking through that and just playing around with it, because if you want to maybe do it forever or for the next 20, 30 years, like you should like it enough that you want to look at it every once in a while, like in your spare time. So yeah, I guess that's what I recommend.
I'm going to just gold nugget that a little bit. 20 or 30 years, having that long-term vision, that long-term commitment, let's call it, that I feel is where important work is done. That's where I think a lot of success lies, is like, I'm curious, but I'm always going to be curious about this specific thing. And at that point, it feels like a calling, like vocation, like, you're meant to do that certain thing. So I think that that's another little tip for the audience. If you're watching and, you have a curiosity that just never goes away, and you commit to that, and you're thinking in 20, 30 year increments, that's important. So that's, a nice point. How about let's flip that question. So is there anything that you would recommend me not to do?
I feel like I see advertisements for things like coding boot camps.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never done one myself, but I feel suspicious about them.
Okay.
It seems like a way to kind of peddle degree or certificate, and it's might not really be worth much. Certainly not a substitute for a 4-year degree in computer science. You're not going to walk out of there with all of the finer details that you might if you went through like a full program.
Gotcha. So yeah, thoroughly vetting training. I'll dovetail with that a little bit. I'm a fan of like the coach online programs, different courses. I've greatly benefited from a few of them. Like I always tell students, like Ty Lopez, the guy in the garage with the Lamborghini that people like rag on, because he spent, I don't know, it was some astronomical marketing number so that people knew he existed. Like everybody on earth knows who he is, because I think he spent like $40 million, something, so something crazy on just YouTube pre-roll ads. But he has a course called 67 Steps, and it was kind of like I paid for other things and education, definitely, paid for a college education, but I think I spent like $67 on that course, and it was the best, most valuable $67 that I could have spent. And it's kind of like set me on a trajectory of different types of learning. When you talk to people, he talks a lot about different people, and he's a big, huge reader. Like had a TEDx talk for reading a book a day, and it's like a skim technique, and it's the combinatory effect of having all these different ideas and how the brain ties them together, and you get all these other great ideas. And a lot of the books that you read, like the biographies and the how-to business books and self-help stuff, they have a lot of similar points, mindset, goal setting, setting SMART goals, that kind of stuff. But his course was like the best $67 I ever spent. And it was like 67 videos across 67 days. So value, like talk about crazy value for what it was. And then there's been courses that I paid a lot, way more money for, that were good in ways that where you get massive amounts of value, but definitely overpriced. So, I guess there is a lot of you get what you pay for out there, but vetting and doing something like this where you interview people who have taken the course. So that's one of the things, like, not just trusting the marketing of like what the course is telling you. All right, find people who are literally have taken the course and have a phone call with them, and reach out to them on Facebook or wherever. I actually am that person on the flip side for a couple of the courses. Like, they use me, like us, Misty and I, as like, call these two guys from New Jersey who have taken our course, and they'll let you know what the course does and if it actually works. So I'd recommend that to vet any course or college, whether it's online, not a certificate, not like a accredited university, or that 4-year college type thing. Like, have that conversation. This conversation is, we'll be on a Skype call for an hour maybe. I've definitely given 20 minutes to an hour to people who want to know about either courses I've taken or have the interest in something that I'm a professional at, or I love to help, and most people do. So I think getting up the confidence to say, oh, I know I'm talking a lot here, but I had a conversation with a student today, and she was kind of giving me, well, I don't think that they're going to get back to me. And then she threw out like some statistics. She's like, like maybe 20%, get back to me. Like, there was like a couple of like excuse type thinking there, where I said, well, all right, well, let's just go with that number. It's 20%. So you send 10 emails. Now you're talking to 2 people, right? So that's not a bad statistic. 10 to have those 2 conversations. Where would you be if you didn't? So throwing that out there, hopefully to motivate people, like, hey, it's not that bad to reach out and have a quick conversation. And most people will, because they kind of are curious about that, and they love doing it even in their off time, like you said. Mm-hmm. And we talked about advice for internships. How about, and I didn't do any like pre-interview with you about this, but like scholarships. Did you get into like scholarships, applying for scholarships, or any kind of creative financing with college? Do you have anything to say about that?
I did the blanket scholarships. Like, there's a one application that you can do, I think, for all the local ones, and I did that. Not a whole lot came of it. Mm-hmm. Some of my later decisions for college were kind of financially motivated. So, I thought it was a good option to. I spent some time at RCBC and then rolled over in Rowan, and that was a very cost-effective solution for me. So.
Yeah, I love that solution. There's a lot of like crossover programs where you do 2 and 2. Is that what you did? Or?
Well, no, I got my associates and then I just did a transfer. So like they have 3+1 at Rowan now. So I wasn't doing anything like that, but it was still nice to know that I was staying within the same school district, or school system, I guess.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, so. I'm hearing that in a couple of different places too. Does it make sense to go full university, or how can you limit the cost, and still get the same track? So that's a good tip. Best networking tip for college while in college. What do you got?
There's a lot of resources on the school side. So like you don't have to try to go out and find that alone. You're paying so much for the school anyway. They have resources. They have contacts with business. Go see what they have.
Yeah. And how is that, like through the what is it, registrar? What's the university department? Is it through the College of Engineering, or how are you doing the networking?
So usually it's through the department. So like I had a project last semester where they brought in people from industry and we worked on projects with them. And there's opportunities for like co-op experience or things like that. And it's usually through whatever school you're in, at least in my experience. So like if you go into the computer science department and say you're looking for work or connections, they have them for you.
Yeah. Yeah, the co-op stuff is another whole, discussion to talk about. Have you done any like co-op type things or?
No, but I did apply some of the work that I've been doing here for internship credit. So it ended up counting as one of my classes, and I got to make money while I was doing it.
I did the same thing while I was at Rowan. I was getting paid to be an audio engineer, and did the college classwork and the credit work for it all at the same time. So, yeah, that be on the lookout for those types of situations where you can be making money and earning college credit to finish up degree type stuff. How about best college success?
Like my best college success?
Yeah, anything stand out?
Jeez. I don't know. I'd have to think about
it. Okay. We can skip that one. And I got the flip side question to that. Worst college mistake. Do you have anything for that one?
Oh, yeah. That one's easy. I handed in an exam blank, wrote my name on it, and handed it in. I couldn't answer anything on it.
Oh, wow. What happened?
I didn't go to the class once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I just kind of told myself that I would learn it on my own, and then I never cracked the book, and I walked in for the exam thinking I'd be able to figure it out, and I couldn't.
Oh, man, yeah. Yeah, that was that over at Rutgers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had similar experiences, and my send-off speech to seniors that have been in my program for a long time is go to class no matter what. It doesn't matter how late you were up the night before or what you were doing right before. There's always fun stuff going on. All times of the day in a college environment. So always go to class and talk to your professors is the other thing that I simple advice. Like the first day of class, introduce yourself. Hey, I'm looking to do really well in here. I appreciate the first lecture. I'll take note of your office hours. You might see me there. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm looking forward to the semester. Something as simple as that. Putting a face to a name. You get benefits of the doubt when, if you are having major problems, like you can't figure out certain concepts and you do go to their office hours and work through those things, when it comes down to the grade point average and, getting, that worked out, you end up getting the benefit of the doubt. So, yeah, I've been there, man. I've been there where, I had to can't just take that class a second time because I didn't go or didn't go enough and couldn't put up what you needed to put up. Mm-hmm. But I will say this, I've also taken courses in college where it was high level math stuff, and when you switch from one instructor to another, it can be night and day. Like if you're tanking with somebody, it could just be that specific teacher and how they're, presenting material and the way that, it's rolled out. And, it could be the time of day, even like certain times of day, you're more sharp. So I've definitely gone from, not understanding to, totally got this. And how can you not get it with, just two different teachers? So throw that out there too. How about,
so I actually have a point about that. There's a lot of things you can ask for from college professors that you can't ask for from high school teachers, and I think that's worth noting. I've had professors who would just let you come to a different section. So it's like, hey, if you don't like coming to this section, you picked it for whatever reason. Here are the other sections I teach. If you want to switch into another one permanently or for the next month, or one day next week, let me know. And they were totally fine with that.
That's big. That's cool. I've never had that happen.
Yeah, I've had, it was the same professor who's done it for a couple classes that I've had him for. asking for points back on tests. If you think you did something and they graded you differently than you would have expected, and you can go in and argue a strong point, do it.
Yeah.
Because they don't have to answer to as many people, so they don't have to play the whole game of, well, if I give him a point back, do I have to give everyone a point back?
Yeah.
So that's you shouldn't be afraid to ask for extra help retaking exams if you mess up on one. If you're there and engaged and you definitely want to learn and they can see that, they might. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, great tips. And I've had similar experience, where at a certain point I know I needed to get certain points and certain things to, accomplish certain things within the track of your course selection stuff, and going and speaking with the professor, and if they put a face to a name, they're going to give, know that you're there and you mean business. They're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and maybe give you those things. Retaking the test, that's pretty cool. I've never tried that one. I like that.
For half credit or something.
Yeah.
See what work out.
That's great. How about this question? What is the toughest part about what you do?
Sometimes it's walking away from it, especially if I'm working on something that is just like got me thinking about it all week and not being able to get through it. That gets rough because it gets almost obsessive, where I don't want to put it down until it's done or it's perfect.
Coding can do that. Yeah. Good tip.
That, and then just the standard, I'm working on a hard problem and the problem's hard, whatever it is.
Yeah. That's a good thing. So having that awareness. So I like when you can set up your like self-hacking a little bit. So one of my self-hacks that I use in sales is, if I'm ever feeling like hesitancy about making a call, I just click the button and I'm on the phone already. So stuff like, all right, I have set up a mental trigger that anytime I'm getting to the obsessive point and a certain amount of time has gone by, I have to stand up and go do something for 20 minutes and then come back down and then get back to it again. So that I think, setting up those, and you got to know yourself a little bit. That's a nice little tip. Cool. How about industry networking? So we talked about college networking. What do you think about, like, is there industry networking? We kind of talked about that earlier, where kind of everybody feeds each other. But you have anything you want to say about that?
Yeah. So the company that I'm working for, there's really only 2 people who are full-time employees of the company, and it's my boss and me at halftime until I come on full-time. Everyone else is some form of contract or subcontract worker, and it's all because there's this network of engineers who all know that they work well together and have worked well together at other companies they've been at or other jobs that they've all been on, and everyone knows who to call.
Yeah. I like that. Knowing who to call. Was it Henry Ford? He had a row of buttons, and I think they were grilling him on the stand. Was it in the Napoleon Hill book, Think and Grow Rich? I forget which book it's in, but they have a story about Henry Ford, and he's in court for some reason, and the attorney who's asking him questions is questioning his ability and knowledge about cars and like the car, the technical of the car, and he kind of squashes the line of thinking, saying, I just know who to call. Like I have a set of buttons in front of me, and when I need an answer, I press the button, and the person who has that comes and gives me that answer. So, that I think is everything in like networking in life. Who does it best, and then work with them once or twice. Maybe try a couple other contractors or subcontractors in the same line, but you keep getting the call if you're doing the work right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that good tip. How about like, and I know you're just getting started with career. I have like best and worst for that as well, like best career success story, worst career story. Do you have anything there that you want to share?
Yeah, we delivered a system, couple radios, and a server over the summer, and that was a push right up until we stopped touching it. And that's kind of always the way that it is. It gets really close to a deadline, and you do as much as you can for as long as you can, and then you send it out. But like I came in here on a weekend at one point, not even because I was asked to come in, just because I couldn't get it out of my head. It got a little obsessive. I was like, I know I can fix it, and
Yeah.
it was like a last minute problem. But we got everything out the door in time, and that was a good success because it was the first time we delivered a productized version of something that the company's been working on for over a decade.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's, yeah. And I obviously wasn't around for all of that, but it was really cool to be a part of.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anything on the flip side of that? Any mistakes, worst career mistakes so far?
Yeah, about 2 years ago, I was building up a set of similar systems. It was actually the prototype version of what we just delivered this summer. And I only had one good working micro SD card, which was what we were using for the operating systems on like a little Raspberry Pi, like a single board computer, like one of these.
We got props. Yeah, Raspberry Pi. All right, cool. Yep.
So I took the only good one and I made a copy of it, like a backup, and then I shipped the original across the country, and the one backup I had got corrupted.
Oh, wow.
And we had to build up like 4 of them, and I didn't realize it until like a week or 2 later.
Oh. I just saw that one.
I didn't. And I had to start from scratch and get as close as I could, but that was another couple late nights where it was like, I don't know why it's not working, and it was because the whole image was corrupted. So I got the pieces from that one.
Wow, that's yeah. We've had a couple stories that are related to SD cards and formatting a card that you thought you had elsewhere, and you end up losing everything. And yeah, I think the redundancy, the thoroughness of storing data. That's a thing, man, in the professional world. So yeah, the research that goes into that, and then having backups of backups, and multiple locations, and fire safe, and all that stuff. Yeah, that's a good tip right there. So keep that somewhere up here. Folks listening to that, it's one of those things that you got to consider everything.
Yeah, and when it happens, it hurts when you lose something important. So
Yeah, and gotta. I have a smaller version of that story. When I was probably your age, working at the recording studio, I was working on a piece for half the day. It was a 4-hour. I got up for lunch and I kicked the plug and didn't save once the whole time I was working on it, and lost the whole a 4-hour very tedious and creative thing that I had put together, and had to kind of recreate the magic. That's never fun. So yeah, I think we've all had those oopses. So this is in the same line, and maybe it may. I don't know if it has to be career or otherwise, but and I pulled a couple of these questions. I don't know if you've heard Tim Ferriss. He wrote 4-Hour Workweek, and the book that it's from, it's called Tribe of Mentors, and he asked the same small set of questions to very important people, and it's a really interesting read of similar to this. It's like talking to people and asking them, what's the cool stuff in life that maybe everybody would benefit from taking away. So I guess that was prefacing the question. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours? Is the way he asks the question.
That was my favorite failure, actually, that story that I just described.
Okay.
Because we had one working system that was across the country, and I think we were able to scrape together one more that worked. And at the end of that project, it was kind of like we checked a box that was like, we can do this and it works to some degree. And because we were able to show that, we were able to continue to develop that same line of product. And it was kind of like it hurt and it felt like a real failure, but it succeeded just enough to let us keep doing some really interesting things.
Yeah. Reinforcing, your ability. Proof of concept is a big push for motivation. So, one it's like proof of concept times 2, I guess, in this instance. So yeah, that's good stuff. How about this one? What advice would you give a smart, driven high school or college student about to enter the college world or real world, and what advice should they ignore?
Be stupid early. That's the advice that I would give. Just because you shouldn't be afraid to ask anything, because if you think you know something or pretend you know something, and then down the line you don't, that's worse than if you had just said, whoa, hold on, I don't understand what you just said, or whatever it is. That's the best time to ask all the questions, is early, especially if you just got a job or something. It's not like they're going to fire you for not knowing something day one, but if you've been pretending you knew it for half a year, that might be a different discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And humble and open to learn goes a long way. Admitting when you're wrong, admitting when you've made a mistake, and trying to figure out how to correct it and do it as fast as possible. You communicate that stuff. I do a lot of contract stuff in real estate, and it's a communication thing. You communicate to other people that are involved in the negotiation and putting a deal together, that there's this hiccup or there's this thing, or something didn't happen that needed to happen, and everybody's just kept in the loop. So yeah, I think the ability to own up and be quote unquote stupid, and stupid's important. That's where learning takes place, is that feeling of I'm not quite there yet, I'm getting there, but I still don't know. And you have to keep going and grind through some of that stuff, the grit and determination stuff. But that feeling, that cognitive dissonance I talk about all the time, it's like going to the gym. It's like you're working some things out, and I don't know the science behind it, but it's definitely a feeling. There's connections that are being made, and things that are happening that doesn't feel good. And then when you finally get over the hump and you take command over that new learning, that does feel good, and you capitalize on that. So yeah, cool. So I like that. And then I guess I don't know if this is reverse advice, but this is another Tim Ferriss question. What are bad recommendations you hear in your profession or area of expertise?
Um, I think the closest thing might be more of an attitude. So people saying that like they have a specialty or they do one thing really well or two things really well and they're an expert in blank. That attitude doesn't seem to be very useful, at least in my experience so far. The more useful people are those who can do more than just one or two things, who aren't afraid to jump into the hardware side if they typically do software, or vice versa, or can use several different tools to accomplish different things than the guy who comes in and says, oh, I do only back-end stuff, or I'm only a hardware guy. It usually takes more of a wide range of skills. So anyone who says go do something and be an expert in one thing, I guess that would be advice that I would ignore.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like I wouldn't call it jack of all trades, but just being open and, being able to kind of spread the borders a little bit of what you know and what you're willing to do and want to do. And I guess there's the the niche and the hyper specialization where the price increases because there's only a small few that can either do or have the tooling to accomplish a very specific kind of task. But I think yeah, I think people are willing to pitch in and figure it out generally, or that's the kind of folks that I like to have on my team. So cool. I guess the last question here, what would you say to somebody who aspires to have a career like yours? Any parting advice?
I mean, nothing I haven't said already. Go find someone else who's interested in it. I mean, anyone who's working in the field would be a good place to start if you know anyone. Find someone who's doing what you want to do.
Yeah. Well, that's it, Mike. I mean, I appreciate your time tonight. I think that this conversation over and over again, this is my third or fourth time, talking this through. We're getting a repetitive thing. I think it does make sense to connect with people who are doing the thing that you want to do as soon as possible. And we're talking about tonight, sophomore year seems to be a good sweet spot to be doing that. And you just have to step up your maturity game and your click the button game, like hesitancy of, for whatever reason, you're not sure what you want to do, or, you think you'll have enough time to do it later, that kind of mentality. Carving out the time to do it, I think is an important thing. And, knowing that, it's your responsibility, and bring your parents on board, and, accepting if they're pushing you a little bit, or, if they're not yet, and you're asking, having that conversation, a mature conversation with your family, and understanding what's the next step. And then I guess at the college level, it's been from what I've heard, you get stuck in your college world and you're not networking beyond the border, beyond the walls. So getting to people in the industry, it sounds like Rowan's doing a nice job of bringing industry folks in for you guys to be working with. And you did it on your own in like creating your own internship opportunities as early as possible, and learning kind of what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And then, different courses, different teachers, different universities where things jive and things don't jive, and pivoting. So like when it's not working, pivoting, I think, is an important, like you said, when you're like hyper focused in a direction and, you notice it, all right, I need to walk away from this and look in a new direction and come back to it. That's an important skill to have too, and a mature thing to do. So I think, a lot of really good tips tonight, and thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me, Mike.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm inviting you to a workshop where you work on you. Work to connect to the best in the world to get clarity. Head over to claritydojo.com. You'll get the latest research techniques,
examples, and it takes all of the guesswork out of which questions to ask in order to get the best insight. Get clarity and take action today.